All right, well, we will start. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. Happy Earth Day. We are so happy to have Monique Gray Smith with us tonight to discuss our community read of Braiding Sweetgrass. Monique is an award-winning best-selling author and has written many books, including Braiding Sweetgrass for Young Adults, which received the Sigurd F. Olson Nature Writing Award in 2022. We also want to thank Senator Michelle Hinchy for her grant, which has made this community read for our county possible. And I look forward to hearing what Monique has to share with us tonight. If anyone has any questions, they can put it in the chat box or the Q&A. And without further ado, we turn it over to Monique.
Thank you, Rain. Tanse Dotimak, Mitanina Naskamon, Kinanaskomotin for the gift of being with you this evening, and Kinanaskomotin to the Lekwungen speaking peoples where I live, also known as Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. So I'm joining you from quite a ways away. And I'm grateful to the Lekwungen speaking peoples for how they've cared for this part of the beautiful earth, how they've cared for all the living beings here, for the ocean, for the rivers, for the creeks, for the air. I always feel, and I've lived here now for almost 30 years, that this is one of the most beautiful places in the world. And I always love when I say that and people go, well, you know where I live? It's also one of the most beautiful places in the world. That when we love where we live, we take care of her in another way. And I'm also grateful to the ancestors and those who have come before, who have taken care of this beautiful place. The caretakers and the stewards today, and the caretakers and the stewards of the future. As Rain said, my English name is Monique Gray Smith, and my traditional name is Mistikwashkikos, meaning little drum. My mom comes from Papikasis First Nation in the Qu'Appelle Valley of Saskatchewan, Treaty 4. My grandfather was Noel Shavetail, was raised out of community by Frank Cardinal and Mary Fayont. And on my dad's side, my grandparents were Raymond Smith and Beatrice Johnstone. And my wife and I, we have twins who are 21, and I'm always like, how did that happen? It's just a blink of an eye, although there were some very long days in that blink of an eye. So I feel quite privileged and very grateful to be joining you today on this day that we know is Earth Day. And while I celebrate, that today is Earth Day, I also think that, the other 364 days of the year are also Earth Day. That we are in this reciprocal relationship with her, and that we don't only show our love and our care and our nurturing of her one day of the year. And then sometimes, sadly, I think that's part of what's gotten us to this state that we're in, is that we haven't provided care on a regular enough basis. I'm going to, in a moment, pull up, I have a little bit of a PowerPoint. So just some slides of myself working on Braiding Sweetgrass for young adults and some key pieces that are in both Braiding Sweetgrass and Braiding Sweetgrass for young adults. Whether you've read Braiding Sweetgrass for young adults yet or listened to the audiobook, I read the audiobook, and as you probably know, Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer read the audiobook of Braiding Sweetgrass, and her voice is just majestic on the audiobook of Braiding Sweetgrass. So let me pull up my, make sure I've got the sound on here. Pull this up. So in a moment here, I'm going to share this 1-minute video. This is from a forest that is just a block from my house. This magnificence of the ferns, this big, the cedar trees. I'm sure some of the cedar trees in this forest are older than before Columbus even set sail. But we're just going to have a minute of being outside to just settle ourselves and our nervous systems before we have this time together. Even though it's virtual, it is still time in community and together. And we're going to sit on the left-hand side of this creek as it flows past us. And we sit on the left-hand side because sometimes we go to the water to let things go, things that might be weighing heavy on our hearts or our minds, and we go to let them go. But if we sit on the other side, whatever we let go goes upstream and comes back to us. We don't want it to come back to us. We want to let it go. So that's why in this little short video, we're on the left-hand side of the creek. So I just encourage you to think about if there's anything left over from the day that you would just like to let go of. That for this 1 minute of immersing ourselves in the beauty of nature, there'll be that opportunity. And one of the gifts when we are outside and we smell the first 1.5 inches of the earth's floor is called humus. And when we smell her, our brain releases oxytocin, which slows down and decreases cortisol, which is the stress hormone. That's why I'm always like, after being outside, even for a very short period of time, or even early in the morning hearing the birds, it's like, and I feel like, with the busyness of the world we're living in, we need more of those deep exhales. We need more of that flood of oxytocin and the decrease of cortisol. So sit back and enjoy this 1 minute. And then just take a deep breath and slowly exhale. Every time I see that, I'm like, wow, I get to live just like next door to the beauty. Oh, and wherever you're joining us from today, I'm sure that there's beauty all around you as well. Sometimes we have to go looking for it, but there is beauty for sure. When we look at the young adult adaptation of Braiding Sweetgrass and Braiding Sweetgrass, there are key elements in both books that talk about the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address. And this illustration is by Nicole Neidhart. She did an illustration for each chapter in Braiding Sweetgrass for young adults. And the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address isn't about the holiday that we celebrate here in Canada in October and that you celebrate in November. Rather, it's about a worldview of giving thanks. And the Thanksgiving is like when I offer thanks, it's like I'm offering thanks for the giving that is to come to me. And in that Thanksgiving, I offer thanks again for the giving that is to come to me. That reciprocity of offering thanks, of offering gratitude, even before whatever is coming to us. So I'm going to read the Thanksgiving address in a moment, but I just wanted to come to a place of talking about, sometimes people ask about cultural appropriation. And, can I use the Thanksgiving address, even though I'm not Haudenosaunee? I'm not Haudenosaunee, and neither is Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer. And so because of that, she was a little concerned and reluctant to initially include it. And so she went to visit an Haudenosaunee elder named Oren Lyons. and Onondaga Faith Keeper. And so I'm going to read to you a little piece from Braiding Sweetgrass about the Thanksgiving address and cultural appropriation. I have heard the Thanksgiving address in many forms, but I'm not a Haudenosaunee citizen or scholar, just a respectful neighbor and listener. Because I feared overstepping my boundaries in sharing what I had been told, I asked permission to write about it and how it has influenced my own thinking. Over and over, I was told that these words are a gift of the Haudenosaunee to the world. When I asked Onondaga Faith Keeper and Haudenosaunee citizen Oren Lyons about it, he gave his signature slightly bewildered smile and said, "Of course you should write about it. It's supposed to be shared. Otherwise, how can it work? We've been waiting 500 years for people to listen. If they'd understood the Thanksgiving then, we wouldn't be in this mess." So I love that in Braiding Sweetgrass, and then I included it in Braiding Sweetgrass for Young Adults, how the gift was given to Robin to share the Thanksgiving address. And you can go on to YouTube and other places online, and there's many people who have shared the Thanksgiving address. So this small piece is an encapsulation of what can often be a very long address. Let us bring our minds together as one, as we send greetings and thanks to each other as people. In these gathered faces, we see that the cycles of life continue. Let us bring our minds together as one, as we send greetings and thanks to our Mother, the Earth, for she gives us everything that we need for life. To the waters of the world that nurture life for all beings, and all the fish life in the water. To the vast fields of plant life, the berries, the trees, and the medicine herbs of the world. To the edible plants we harvest from the garden, especially the three sisters. Let us bring our minds together as one, as we send greetings and thanks to the beautiful animal life of the world and all the birds who move and fly about over our heads. To the powers we know as the four winds, who purify the air we breathe and help to bring the change of seasons. Let us bring our minds together as one, as we send greetings and thanks to our grandfathers, the thunder beings, who live in the west with their lightning and thundering voices. To our eldest brother, the sun, our oldest grandmother, the moon, and the stars who are spread across the sky like jewelry. Let us bring our minds together as one, as we send greetings and thanks to the enlightened teachers who have come to help throughout the ages. We now turn our thoughts to the Creator, or Great Spirit, and send greetings and thanks for all the gifts of creation. Now our minds are one. And so I love this address because it's a way to acknowledge all of the gifts that are in this beautiful place we call the world. And I've been in preschools with children as little as 2 and 3 years old, and this poster is up, and they go through and they talk about all the beings that they're grateful for. And when we begin at a young age to have a worldview that all good things begin with gratitude, how we see the world changes, how we navigate the world changes, how we believe that there is goodness in people changes. So for me, this is one of the places I like to start, is the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address. And it reminds us that we have to unlearn, well, my slides don't want to advance, there we go. We have to unlearn the hurrying, that we really do live in a grind culture of go, 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 schedule, 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 minutes, everything. But when we slow down, our heart rate changes, our ability to notice the beauty changes, our ability to receive ideas of how to make change in the world strengthens. That we have to unlearn the hurrying, make decisions that create space for us instead of stress. So for me, I always take this to heart every single time I share this, the unlearning of hurrying. So for me, writing Braiding Sweetgrass for young adults has been a journey. My very first novel, Tilly, A Story of Hope and Resilience, which is loosely based on my life and tells the history of Indigenous people through a lens of resilience. That book first came out in 2013, just over 10 years ago. And since then, all of these books have come out into the world. I feel immensely grateful for the books that have come, that, in my slowing down moments, ideas come for books. And then I get to work with incredible illustrators like Nicole Neidart, who did all of the illustrations for Braiding Sweetgrass for young adults. She's also done the illustrations for When We Are Kind, Circle of Love, and what has been the most recent release, Dreaming Alongside. But I never ever thought I would ever work on an adaptation. And I first read Braiding Sweetgrass in 2012, or pardon me, 2015. And, it took me a year to read that book. Even just when I read the preface, I had to put her down because I had to have space to let all that I was reading in those first few pages to find their rightful place in me. I think also I was seeing some of my own writing, and in all my writing, there's this teaching that love is medicine. And I was reading that so strongly on the pages of Braiding Sweetgrass. Over my year, this was my copy. You can see how tattered she was. And so in 2019, I had a phone call from a Cherokee author named Tracy Sorrell. And she had told me that a publisher had gotten the rights to adapt Braiding Sweetgrass for young adults. And I just kind of giggled. I was like, good luck to whoever's going to do that. And she said, well, actually, I put your name forward. And that started, the rolling. And I didn't hear anything for a while. And then when I finally did hear that we were going to be moving forward, my first step was to reach out to Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer. I found her email online, sent her an email and said, this is potentially what's happening, but I'd really like to have a visit with you to see if I'm a fit for you to do this adaptation. And that's how things started. And here we are with Braiding Sweetgrass for young adults. And when you look at this, you can see how an illustrator can, through subtleties, help us understand differences. So when you look at the Braiding Sweetgrass cover, that braid of sweetgrass, which is one of our medicines, right? Those 3 strands in this book, Indigenous wisdom, scientific knowledge, and teachings of the plants, those 3 strands got braided together. In the cover on Braiding Sweetgrass, you see that that's gold, that the cover of that sweetgrass, there's a little bit of green, but it's gold. And if you look at for young adults, you see way more green and a little bit of purple because that's young sweetgrass that has just been picked. And so those subtle things that an illustrator can do, that then in the classroom or around your dinner table, you can have really poignant conversations about the contributions of an illustrator. And for me, I think this is one of my favorite quotes in Braiding Sweetgrass. Imagine how less lonely the world would be if we knew and believed that we didn't have to figure everything out by ourselves. And this was truly my journey on this adaptation. When we knew everything was going to be moving forward, I had 6 months to write the adaptation and only 1/3 of the word count from the original manuscript. And so Robin and I worked very closely on different pieces. But for me, I had to go away for the first week. I went to this beautiful retreat center on one of our Gulf islands. Because I'm one of those people that, when there's uh, a deadline, I somehow like to procrastinate. And I noticed that, well, we have a lot of bananas in the freezer. I should make banana bread. Or that the baseboards haven't been washed for a long time. And I needed to go somewhere because I was on such a tight deadline where I could really focus. And so I went away, and a friend took this photo coming up from the beach. And that really is how this project has felt, is a project of love and of joy. So this was the process. Each of these big white flip charts were one of the sections in Braiding Sweetgrass. And then the orange stickies are each of the chapters. And then as you can see, the smaller stickies, the green ones were teachings of the plants, the pink ones were indigenous wisdom, and the pastel ones were scientific knowledge. And you can see on some of the orange, besides some of the orange ones, there's nothing there. Those were some of the chapters that we knew for sure would not be part of the adaptation. And then I added a new section, which was meeting sweetgrass. So I want to read just a little bit to you from the introduction. In Potawatomi, which is the nation that Robin is from, the language, in that language, sweetgrass is Wingoshk. If we gathered together, I'd lay freshly picked sweetgrass in your hands. She would be loose and flowing, golden green and glossy at the top, and the stems purple and white. I'd invite you to hold the bundle up to your nose and breathe her in. What words can capture that smell? It's like the fragrance of your mother's newly washed hair as she hugs you, or the melancholy smell of summer slipping into fall, or the smell of a memory that makes you close your eyes for a moment and then a moment longer. As you breathe it in, you start to remember things you didn't know you'd forgotten. There are many ways to describe the beautiful scent of sweetgrass. For me, it's like a honey vanilla combined with the scent of river water and black earth. Perhaps this beauty is what inspired its scientific name, Hierochlora odorata, the fragrant holy grass. In my Potawatomi language, it's called Wingoshk, the sweet-smelling hair of Mother Earth. And so this new section invites the reader in to meet sweetgrass. So my process was I would get up about 4:30 in the morning and write until lunchtime. And then in the afternoon, I'd go and work in my yard or my garden and put my headphones in. And I would listen to what I was going to be working on the next day. I would listen to the audiobook of Robin reading what I was going to be working on the next day. So I was always in process. And then at night I would tinker. And every single word mattered. Actually, when we reached the final product, there was 10 too many words, just 10 words. But we had to find 10 to remove. And so at night I would tinker, and I love baseball. And this was happening in late August, September, and October. So lots of baseball on TV. And our cats would sit with me. This was my 10th book, and never before had she ever sat with me like this. But it was like she could feel the love of the project. I remember one night my wife got up to get something from the kitchen, and when she came back, she's like, "How's it going over there?" And I said, "Just when I've worked on the most beautiful chapter, there's another one." And that really was how it felt working on the adaptation. So in the adaptation, there's enhancements. History is much more profound. Social and emotional learning. There are illustrations. There are pullouts and a glossary and reflections and reflection questions and calls to action. So let's dive in a little bit. So this is under the category of scientific knowledge. This is a chapter called Asters and Goldenrod, the two beautiful, beautiful flowers. This illustration done by Nicole Neidhart is, as Robin talks in this chapter, about her mom holding her, and when the blanket fell away, for the first time she saw the magnificence of asters and goldenrod. And so you can see also the subtleness of those flowers are in the shape of a heart. And Nicole did research to make sure that those bees would have been the bees that were present where this chapter unfolds, and at the time that this chapter unfolds. If you're by chance looking at your book of Braiding Sweetgrass for Young Adults, you'll notice that the illustration is a little bit different. That when we shared this with Robin, she said, you know, I actually think that my mom's hair was a little bit shorter during that time. And so Nicole made that slight adjustment. So you can see on the right there, there's a definition, botany, a branch of biology dealing with plant life. So I wanted the definitions right there. One, because I needed definitions when I read Braiding Sweetgrass, but I wanted them right there because young people and young at heart who are reading this book are more accustomed to having things right away. As well, I didn't want in a classroom setting, if a learner was needing to go to the glossary a lot, to have that kind of demonstrative page turning happening and draw attention to them. I wanted to make sure that their dignity was upheld. So the definitions are right there. And then on this page, you can see there's an experiment that happens on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side is that beautiful braid with a sentence in it. Why is the world so beautiful? Is a question I hope we are all exploring. And again, a definition, and then a reflection. So you can begin to see the engaging way in which Braiding Sweetgrass for Young Adults interweaves with hearts and minds of those who are reading or also who are educators and who are sharing this book. If we think about teachings of the plants, this beautiful teaching, if you ask permission, you have to listen to the answer. And sometimes people go, I don't really know what that means. If you think about if you had the gift last summer or early fall to go pick berries, you might have gone and they might have been resistant. Maybe they weren't quite ripe, but they'll let you know, right? But if we pull them, if we still take those berries, when we bring them home, it takes a lot of sugar to either make jam out of them or make them palatable in just as berries or in pie or however you're using them. They've set a boundary. When they resist like that, they're setting a boundary with you. Excuse me. And I think it's the same in our human relationships. That if somebody sets a boundary with us and we don't listen and we keep pushing, it takes a lot of sugar or a lot of repair to have that relationship healthy again. In my teachings, before we go and pick anything, we always offer tobacco. And this isn't like the store-bought tobacco. This is a medicine that we grow, a form of medicine that we grow. And that is like being in reciprocal relationship. It's like, I'm offering you this gift for the gift that you are giving to me. And it's all part of the honorable harvest. When we go out, we never take the first berries or plants or apples that we come across. We ask permission and we listen for the answer. We only take what we need or what we're going to give away. And we do it in the least harmful way as possible. We use everything we take, we share, we offer our gratitude, and we reciprocate the gift. Like for me, I said offering tobacco. When we navigate the world from this way, then everything is in cycle. That there is this cycle of giving and receiving, and never always just taking it all, so that there's always some left. And in the strand of Indigenous wisdom, there's great discussion about gifts. And not the gifts that we might give somebody for their birthday, but the gifts, the bundle of gifts that we've all come into the world with, are a unique way to contribute to the wellness of the world. And so it's like looking at, the unique gifts I have, and how do I use those gifts to contribute, not only my gifts, but also my dreams to contribute. Also in the teachings of the plants, and now in Braiding Sweetgrass for Young Adults, in the Meeting of Sweetgrass chapter, we talk about the grammar of animacy, about how not only us as humans are alive, but so are the trees, so are the rocks, so is the water, so are the medicines, so are the strawberries. All beings are alive. And when we describe a being as an it makes it very easy to harm it. But if we use this word kin, it means they are a relative, and it makes it a little more difficult to harm. In Braiding Sweetgrass, I give the example of, if you're in high school with your friend and you say, "Oh, there's Sarah, she's studying for her exam." But if we said, "Oh, there's Sarah, it's studying for its exam," you can see the in that. And so when we begin to look at the world as all living beings, how we walk in the world, how we make decisions, how we uphold the living beings changes. And part of it is how we speak and using the grammar of animacy. Also in this strand is reciprocity and responsibility. And as I said earlier, how do you use your gifts and your dreams for good? And I get asked a lot, what does the word reciprocity mean? It's like, when we put something out, when we send out love, we know that that love is going to come back to us. It may or may not be from the person we give our love to, it might come from someplace else. Same with kindness, or same with money. But it's this belief that we are in a reciprocal relationship, that what I put out is going to come back to me. And I've also really seen this at times in my life when there's been a lot of hurt and I'm in kind of that angry place because of the hurt and of the grief. And so I'm walking in the world with some of that, then that's also then what comes back to me is a little bit more of that. So it's our own internal work to find our way back to love, away from fear. Unless, of course, that fear keeps us cautious of something or someone. But this importance of how do we walk in the world and these teachings of reciprocity, and in that, our responsibility. And then, as I said, what we've expanded in Braiding Sweetgrass for young adults and pulled out a little bit more is history. The understanding of the truth of history, both in Canada and the United States, in regards to boarding schools specifically. In Canada, we call them residential schools. In the United States, they were called and are called boarding schools. And this has been a huge part of my work over the last 30 years. To me, when I talk about reconciliation, this is my definition about making the invisible visible. That for many years, the truth of history has been invisible. And now we're doing more and more to make it visible. So, here in Canada, this generation, and I think it's starting to happen more and more in the United States, this generation is the first generation that's learning the truth of history in regards to residential and boarding schools in school. So for me, it's about having a willingness to listen to and have meaningful conversations with others, to be curious, to be open, and having the ability to reflect on difficult things. And this wheel takes us very back to that first slide of nature. Because sometimes when we learn something new of history, or we've had a difficult conversation, or we need time to reflect on something difficult, going outside in nature, being in nature is one of the most beautiful ways to allow things to find their rightful place for us. Or to go for a walk and have a question that you're pondering, and through the walking, the answer will be revealed to you. Or at least your next step of how to solve whatever you're pondering will be revealed to you. When we look at history, this is the residential school close to my mom's community in Saskatchewan, Canada. This school was initially built in 1892 and was burnt down 3 different times and rebuilt. You can see the large building there where classes happen, where the dorms were. On the left, all of those buildings were different buildings. The shop building, um, all different things that supported the functioning of the school. You can see the two churches in the background. You see on the right the massive garden where the students would work. What you don't see in this photograph is the burial ground of children who never made it home. And then you also see the teepees and the fence. And these are the families that just couldn't be away. Even though they couldn't talk to or speak their language to or kiss goodnight or hug their children or share stories with them or share songs with them, at least they could see their children. And having had my twins, I know I'd be one of these families. So it helps us to understand there has been intergenerational trauma as a result of these schools because of the cultural loss that happened at the schools, the cutting of the hair, the wearing of uniforms, the inability to speak language, and the abuse that happened in the schools. Here's some information between 1819 and 1969. The federal Indian boarding school system operated schools across 37 states or then territories, including Alaska and Hawaii. More than 40 of these boarding schools were in New Mexico, the third highest in the United States, behind Oklahoma and Arizona. So whenever I look at this photograph, I think about, the trauma that happened and the knowingness that we have today. In our communities, we've called it blood memory for years, that in our cells, we remember the traumas. Science today calls it epigenetics, the scientific proof that we have this memory in our cells. But I also know that if we have the memories of the traumas, we also have the memories of the joy and of the language and of our ceremonies. We just need space for them to wake up. So for me, when I think about history, there's beautiful chapters in Braiding Sweetgrass for young adults about Robin talking about Carlisle boarding school and the impact on her family. And I say beautiful not as in like heartwarming or gorgeous, but beautifully written, beautifully told, that helps the reader to understand history. And one of those pieces is that Robin's grandma used to send items to her and her family. And in the box, it would say, "Remember who you are." Because these systems, boarding school and other systems, have attempted to disrupt that cultural connection, have attempted to disrupt the pride in the cultural connection. And so it's important that we have space for the remembering of who we are. And then the other enhancement that has been quite demonstrative in Braiding Sweetgrass for young adults is the social and emotional learning. This one braid, imagination, is one of our most powerful tools. What we imagine, we can become. And when we think back to that photo of the children of the families at boarding school, we know that the pace of children in those schools, that there is very little space for imagination. There is very little space for daydream. That the majority of the traumas that unfolded happened at night. So sleep was constantly disrupted. And so the ability also to dream in the dream time was compromised. And so today, imagination is something we really work on fostering, because if you look around wherever you're seating right now, every single thing in that space where you're seating was once an idea, was once in somebody's imagination, and they brought it to life. And when we look at that second line, what we imagine, we can become. So helping children and young people and ourselves imagine ourselves into being, and having aunties and uncles and grandparents who speak our future, full of beauty, full of love, full of contributions, full of possibilities. That's the imagination today that is so powerful. that all of us, every single one of us joining today, can foster. And when I think about social and emotional learning in Braiding Sweetgrass for Young Adults, one of my favorite chapters is Witch Hazel. And if you've read Braiding Sweetgrass and/or Braiding Sweetgrass for Young Adults, you'll remember this chapter is actually written by Larkin, Robin's youngest daughter. And when her and Robin are in the field one day, and Larkin sees an elderly woman over by the fence named Hazel, and they become friends. And some of you know, like in November, Witch Hazel comes alive just as the winter begins to descend. This beautiful plant with these beautiful yellow leaves. It's like this sight to be seen and powerful medicine. And we learn that Hazel has come to live with her son because her husband died of a heart attack on Christmas Eve, and that the house was literally left ready for Christmas Eve dinner when the heart attack happened. And that over time, Robin and Hazel become very dear friends. And Robin takes her back to the house, and they clean up and they tidy up the house, and Hazel's just so happy to be home or to visit home. And then one day she just kind of casually says to Robin, "Oh, what I would do for one more Christmas in my old house." And so Robin and her family and Robin's students at Syracuse University, they make it happen. They clean up the house, they decorate, they have food, they do all kinds of things. And then Robin goes to pick up Hazel and says, "Let's go for a drive." And she takes her back to the house, and Hazel has her wish of one more Christmas in the house. And one of the beautiful things that Hazel says is, "There is no hurt that can't be healed by love." And for me, I think that is so profound, that love is a form of medicine. And it's one we need in this world right now, really, really on massive doses. But it's the kindness that is a salve also, a salve that we need in these times as well. So I share this because when we talk about social and emotional learning, it's about young people and ourselves understanding our emotions, understanding about how and who we are in the world, understanding about our own sense of either self-determination, or some people call it agency, and also understanding how our what might sometimes seem as our small ways of being kind, generous, grateful, loving, how they have a massive change in the world. And we don't always get to see the change that happens. So just before I change this slide one more time from Hazel, there is no hurt that can't be healed by love. Also in the social and emotional perspective taking. So there's questions for young people and/or yourselves to pause and to think about, to reflect on. And when we take perspective of perhaps somebody else's lived experience, it shifts things. It might shift our own unconscious and/or implicit biases. It might shift the stereotypes we might have about an individual or about a culture or about a race of people. That perspective taking is a very powerful way to spend some time reflecting. And so just before we open for questions and curiosities and thoughts and reflections, I just want to share this. This is one of my favorite quotes from Robin. "Even a wounded world is feeding us. Even a wounded world holds us, giving us moments of wonder and joy. I choose joy over despair, not because I have my head in the sand, but because joy is what the earth gives me daily, and I must return the gift." And if you're joining us as an educator, you can reach out to Learner Publishing, and they've developed an educator guide to support you using Braiding Sweetgrass for young adults in the classroom. So I think I will stop sharing at this point, and come back just to me. And I think maybe Rain, we can open up and see if there's any thoughts, questions, curiosities, reflections, wonderings.
I don't see anything yet, but if anyone has anything they would like to ask Monique, this
Mm-hmm.
is a good time.
Or
I'm
any.
really glad, sorry, I'm really glad you shared the chapter on witch hazel. That happened to be my favorite. And my youngest child is named Hazel. And she
Oh,
happened to be born in November. And I had no idea until I read that chapter that that is when it blooms. So that was extra gift for me.
yeah. When I do sessions with educators, I always say, if there's discombobulation happening in your classroom, read that chapter. Yeah.
Yeah. I see somebody said in the chat, I love the way you have added in the science definitions and the illustrations are amazing.
Mm,
I agree.
yeah. Nicole's illustrations. She was living in Santa Fe at the time we were working on this. That's where she grew up with her family. She's Dene. And I went to Santa Fe and spent a week. And, we sat at her family's kitchen table and we went to coffee shops and we talked about each chapter and what might be an illustration to include and the subtleties. Like when you look at the Thanksgiving address, everything that's, excuse me, in that chapter is so profound. But there are other illustrations where I'm looking for um, the cedar one. When you look at the illustrations, there's so much to unpack in every single one that, the little things like even this one here, there again, the cattails are in the shape of a heart, right? That's
Mm,
holding up somebody giving gratitude first thing in the morning. So yeah, she's a very special human being.
yeah, absolutely. It definitely brings the stories out in a very special way.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. I'd love to quote from this book, but feel like I'm appropriating. But it really resonates with me, and I think it would so resonate with students and visitors that I share with where I work. Some of the descriptions are so spot on and help really make connections to the earth.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think, and the insight around cultural appropriation and the caution. I think about, how Robin, when I read to you about her visit with Oren Lyons in regards to the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address, how she just wrote about it. And if there's quotes or pieces that you want to use from Braiding Sweetgrass for Young Adults, I think as long as you acknowledge where that comes from. And I've seen in various schools where they'll have quotes up because you can get like you can get the Thanksgiving address from Learner Publishing, and Nicole has a few other posters on her website. And then I've seen people put a QR code below so that you can get access to the book or at least the page where that comes from, so that you're engaging the person walking by reading that. They're like, oh, well, what's that from? Because that resonates with me. I want to learn more about that. And so you're acknowledging where it comes from. So it's not necessarily appropriating, right? You're sharing where it comes from and giving opportunities for them to take the next step in learning more if they want to. So again, Pammy, thank you for your humility in wanting to ensure that you're working in a good way and not appropriating. Thank you for that. I I do how to use braiding sweetgrass for young adults in the classroom with an organization called Outdoor Learning. We do 4 sessions, kind of a section in the book, each of those sessions. And one session, there was a woman joining us from Scotland, and she said, I'd really like to ask, how is it okay if I want to create my own Thanksgiving address? And I said, yeah, I think it is okay. Because if you write, a place of gratitude for all the beings where you live, like that's not appropriation. It's if you said, the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address is mine and I live in Scotland. That's appropriation. So she came back the next week and she had sent it to me by email, her Thanksgiving address. And I was like, wow. I said, would you consider like recording this so we could share it with everybody the next week? And she did. And it was just so magnificent because it was such a beautiful example of how to take inspiration from the Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address and to really sit in the place where you are, which was Scotland for her, Glasgow, and think about all the beings who she's grateful for in Scotland. And there are beings that I had never ever heard of before, and so she said, she recorded and she said, I used my most posh accent so people might be able to understand me. And then she also put closed captions because there's beings that, as she said them, I wouldn't know what they are. And it was just this beautiful way for people to see how you can take an idea and not appropriate it, but use it as an inspiration of gratitude. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you for that question and curiosity.
We have another question. I'm leading a book discussion on the book on Sunday. What's the most important question I should ask?
I think that one maybe that I showed you, that question, why is the world so beautiful? Is a question I hope we're all asking. Yeah, that's one. And as you read also, Robin asks her students, right, at Syracuse University in their first class of botany, does the earth love you back? And how does the earth love you back? Yeah, thank you for that.
Wendy says, when I first read Braiding Sweetgrass, my heart was nourished by every word and especially the images it evoked. It was a remembering of the wisdom I knew as a child. And for me, school was mostly denying what my heart knew was true. Deep gratitude for this gift to the young.
Thank you, Wendy. Yeah. And that's what Robin has heard since Braiding Sweetgrass came out in 2014 for the first time, I think it was 2014. And it's what I hear with the kids in school. They're like, oh yeah, I remember. Their remembering is still so close, right? So it is an awakening. And I think that's part of why Braiding Sweetgrass has been such a powerful book for so many people, because most people have been given Braiding Sweetgrass. People have also bought it, but I've been in so many bookstores when people buy one copy, they always buy two because they're going to gift the other one to somebody else, right? That it wakes up something in us. And when we have something woken up in us, we want other people we love to wake up to that remembering also. So thank you for that acknowledgement, Wendy.
Going back to Tammy earlier, is it okay to ask and then create something, that really connects to the land we are on? It would be such a great way to share the cultural connection to the indigenous peoples who cared for the land before I was here to help with it.
For sure. And I think that's what Carol from Scotland, that's an example of one of the ways to be able to do that. Yeah, wonderful.
Tammy also says, so grateful for all you have shared, for creating this adaptation, and for giving us a chance to see your love for Robin's book and the earth.
Yeah, thank you. And you probably know that she has the moss book that came out before Braiding Sweetgrass, and then more recently the Serviceberry that also just came out. Beautiful, beautiful books.
It is. Yes, we have that in our library. Well, this has been lovely. And yeah, I was just thinking about what was said about remembering as a child and what you were talking about when you opened about slowing down. And that is what children do. I mean, I'm a mom of 7, and I've had And I oftentimes you get so caught up in the busyness of your life and what you have to do. It's the children who kind of slow you down
Mm.
to kind of remember like you're supposed to actually be enjoying the ride a little bit.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think sometimes, thank you for that, Rain, because I think sometimes that can be the beauty of an audiobook also, right? Is that in those times when you do have clothes to fold or dishwashers to unload or lunches to pack, you can listen to something that soothes your soul also, right? Yeah, I think
yeah,
that's the beauty of audiobooks as well.
it is. That is true. Yeah. Um, yes. Tammy says the service berry is incredible and a great salve for these times. Yes.
Right?
And I think, yes, having the gratitude right now in the midst of and finding the joy. Um,
Mm.
do you have any recommendations for how to find the joy in the midst of this time where a lot of people are having a hard time, especially a hard time?
Yeah. Well, I think that somehow we have been convinced that joy is some big tidal wave that comes and then I get all tingly and whoa. But I really think it's in the very small moments. When a hummingbird comes to the window for a moment and flitters off, when we hear a child laugh, right? When we get a text from somebody we haven't heard from for a while, when we go outside and like my little nephew was here the other day and his dad and I were outside and I was like, doesn't the grass feel amazing? Because neither of us had socks on. He's like, yes, right? Like, this is like a almost 50-year-old man who looked like a child, just like his feet in this grass. So I think it's about paying attention to these smaller moments. I was in New York in December 2023 and New York City. For some reason, I'd always wanted to go to New York City at Christmas time to see the lights, I think. And so my wife and I went, and then I was in Syracuse visiting Robin and doing a session with librarians. And then we flew to Los Angeles where I had another session with Head Start. And when we got into the hotel, it was late at night and I had an early morning presentation. And I saw a Starbucks in the lobby and I was like, I might need that tomorrow morning. And then when I was in line the next morning, I noticed in the long line that everybody was kind of like, were on their phones. But I started to notice that as people left the counter and before they'd even had any sip of whatever they had, they were a bit changed. It's like, oh, and as I got closer, the woman behind the counter, she was just like, oh, kind of like she had this lovely voice and high notes and I got up and she looked me in the eye and asked how my day was and very engaging. And the next morning I saw the same thing. And then the next day when we were waiting for the shuttle to the airport, I went over and introduced myself and said like I've really noticed like how when people leave you at the counter like their body has changed and they have a smile or they're lighter. I said it's like you're giving little bouts of joy. And I said, how do you do that? And she said, well, I wake up at 3 a.m. And I was like, oh. She said, because my shift starts at 5 and I have to do things for my kids and then I have to take the bus here. She said, and then, I get here and I feel like it's a decision, joy or no joy. Choose joy or don't choose joy. And she said, and what I find is that when I'm joyous to people, it almost always comes back to me.
Mhm.
She said, people say thank you, or you made my day, or have a wonderful day, or they just give me a smile. She said, and that's how joy works. You put her out and she comes back to you. You put her out and she comes back to you. So I think about, if you're not experiencing much joy, get outside as much as possible for one, especially on a sunny day. And if you're wearing glasses, take them off and let that sun hit your eyelids, get a boost of vitamin D, and be around people who are experiencing joy. Like the people and the beings that we are around are very important in our own electromagnetic field. If we were in a room and there was 10 of us all like this, it's hard to be in a different state. And what we talk about and the energy we give, all that's happening, it is difficult times. And so it is like a discipline to focus on the moments of joy. And there are some days when that is really, really difficult, for sure. And that's when we need people to remind us, "Oh, did you see that? Or have you seen this quote? Or I baked cookies last night and I brought an extra one for you for lunch." Like whatever those moments are. But if we don't attune to them and we don't pause and notice them, they just flip by. And then we're feeling like there's no joy. So I think joy is definitely a medicine that we need right now, for sure.
Well
Yeah.
said. Yeah. 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 Patty says, slow down, search for the small, be grateful for every bird song and each new flower.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, this has been wonderful. Unless anyone else has anything that they would like to ask Monique while we have her here. Tiffany says, thank you so much for your time this evening. It has been very powerful for me, and I
Mhm.
appreciate hearing your passion and insight.
Mhm.
So, thank you.
Much gratitude. Thank you, Tammy. Can
Yeah,
I just close with an incantation?
absolutely.
May there be beauty to the left of you. May there be beauty to the right of you. May there be beauty below you. May there be beauty above you. May there be beauty behind you. May there be beauty in front of you. And may you always remember the beauty within you. Hi, hi. Thank you, Rain, for all your organizing over the months. And thank you, everyone who joined us this evening. What a beautiful gift to spend time with you, even miles and miles physically apart. I'm
Yeah.
grateful for the togetherness.
Yes, it feels like we're in the same room.
Yeah.
And Wendy says, thank you for the shot of joy, better than
Mm.
espresso.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone, for
All
joining us.
right.
Thank you so much, Monique.
Thank you.
Lovely
Be
to meet
well,
you.
everyone.
Have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.
See you.
See you.